it was everything I loved, which is networking and connecting with people. It was content, right? And it was business development. It was referral relationships. It was potential clients all wrapped into one conversation. So I started doing that and it became addictive to me because like if I could have on, you mentioned the founder of P90X and ask all the questions I want to know on, that was amazing.
What you don't know is costing you commas and zeros. Welcome to the Owner's Profit Playbook. I'm Pat Mancuso. Most entrepreneurs think their biggest challenge is growing revenue, but the real problem is the profit leaks hiding inside their business. On this show, we break down the strategies, structures, and financial blind spots that separate struggling operators from truly profitable businesses. Because building a business is one thing, but building a business that creates wealth, that's the real playbook.
Welcome to the Owner's Profit Playbook. My name is Pat Mancuso, and I'm excited that you are joining us today. Most business owners think they have a lead problem, but what they actually have is a relationship problem. Our guest today is going to talk about this in depth. And what you don't know about who you don't know is costing you commas and zeros, and you're one conversation away from changing your business. That is our conversation today, and we are super excited about the guest that we have joining us today. We're going to break down how to build a pipeline without cold outreach, without chasing, without feeling like you're always burning through money with ads. So our guest today is versed amazingly into how to turn conversations into the most profitable growth channel. And in full transparency, I have a great relationship with Rise25. Today's guest is Dr. Jeremy Weisz, entrepreneur, relationship strategist, and co-founder of Rise25. So Jeremy has built multiple businesses across health, chiropractic, and now a digital agency helping B2B companies connect with their dream 200 clients and partners using podcasting. Since 2008, he's interviewed founders and CEOs from Pixar, PX90, Atari, RX Bar, and many, many more. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Pat, this will be fun. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited, and I'm really excited because I think the topic is so timely based upon what's happening with AI, the change in SEO, and in all those things. So let me start with, you've interviewed some of the top entrepreneurs in the world. What's something they all understand that most business owners miss?
You know, I was just on with someone right before this call. And Adam Miller started in his bedroom, and his company ended up taking his company public in $5 billion company. Okay.
Wow.
And I don't know if it's any different from like successful people, but like it's just hard and there's a lot of pressure. And he was talking about how he weathered the storm over decades, and no matter what it was, there was something like throwing up an obstacle. And so like the trend I see with all the interviews is like, no matter how successful, how big they are, they went through some crap to get to where they are, and it was tough. And they had to make some hard decisions along the way, and they just had to kind of have a belief in what they were doing, you know? And so that's a common theme I see, is just like having a certain amount of grit and perseverance to in the belief in what they're doing. And some of them, you know, like I remember you mentioned the founder of Einstein Bagels. I had Noah Alper on. He grew Noah's Bagels and sold it to Einstein Bagels for like $100 million. But before that, he was selling tchotchkes, like religious tchotchkes, out of his trunk. Okay.
Oh,
and
wow.
then they started one store that, you know, that was hard, and they just grew it. Right. And so
Sure.
there were just failures along the way. And that's inspiring to me to kind of see it's not this like smooth up into the right trajectory. And even, I don't know, you know, Pat, I know you're into reading and books. Like one of my favorites is Shoe Dog. And I felt it was like entrepreneurial therapy, because it's like, oh, the founder of Nike had to like almost like couldn't make payroll, like almost like failed multiple times along the journey. and now it's Nike, right?
Right.
So there's just so many of those stories of on the brink. And when I talked to Adam, he's like, we called it like near death experiences that he had to, you know, get past to get to
Sure.
where he was.
Sure. That's that I love the way you put that. I wonder how many near-death experiences business owners have on a daily basis, right? Like,
Yeah.
meeting payrolls once a week, and yet, wow, there's just a lot of challenge and a lot of opportunity for businesses out there. So let me ask you this question. You've built businesses across many different, very different industries. From your perspective, what was a common thread?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned in the front of this, which is relationships. And for me, the foundation for everything for me is one, relationships, and two, direct response copywriting marketing, which bleeds into relationships. And so, like for me, even in any industry, I've applied that. I've gone across different industries and applied that. And in the way I think of it, and you mentioned my background was in biochemistry as a like studied biochemistry at Wisconsin and went on to be a chiropractor. And you're like, how are you now helping companies launch and run podcasts? This makes no sense. But in chiropractic school, they don't teach you business. You work with a lot of people in different industries too. Like they don't teach you business and marketing. So I was going to these conferences and trying to learn, right? Because as a chiropractor, you're not just a chiropractor, you're a small business owner.
Right.
And so I was going to these conferences. I stumbled across this thing it wasn't called podcasting. Like at the time, most people didn't know what a podcast was, but there were some people early on. This is probably, we're talking around 2008,
Oh, wow.
um, who were doing interviews and publishing them online. Okay. And that's really to the extent of it. And it was everything I loved, which is networking and connecting with people. It was content, right? And it was business development. It was referral relationships. It was potential clients all wrapped into one conversation. So I started doing that and it became addictive to me because like if I could have on, you mentioned the founder of P90X and ask all the questions I want to know on, that was amazing. And
Right.
some of my favorite authors and everything like that. And so over time, having these people on, it's a gift. Like I'm basically spending my time producing a marketing asset that talks about them and their lessons, but it's valuable for other people. It's valuable for me. And I gain these relationships and I realize, okay, you mentioned in different industries, so I'm like, okay, well, like someone was mentioning e-commerce. And so I'm like, okay, I'll started having all these e-commerce founders on, and then people who ran e-commerce conferences and people who were involved in e-commerce mastermind groups. And all of a sudden, after like 6 months, I know some of the major players in that space. Same thing with mentioned direct response. Like some of my favorites, I remember having Brian Kurtz on the podcast. He wrote one of my favorite books, Over Deliver. And he, like you mentioned, the one relationship, he was been doing it for decades. Like I just came in, didn't know many people, was really just, I've been studying like Dan Kennedy stuff for a long time.
Sure.
But then I'm like, oh my God, I went on like 6 months stint of just having on the best and brightest direct response marketers and copywriters in the world. And before you know it, I went to Brian's Titans event, which he did, I think it was 2014. And again, I was new to the direct response industry, knowing people, but almost every speaker came off the stage and I had a personal relationship with them because I had them on the podcast and we chatted and there was like I remember a long line of people waiting to talk to this person. They beelined it, came, gave me a hug and then went back to the front of the line. They're like, how do you know this person? I'm like, well, I had him on the podcast 3 months ago. We became friends, right?
Yeah,
And
because
so
it's hard.
it's about forming relationships
Right.
and deep relationships with people. And for me, I approach relationships as like, how do I give as much as humanly possible to someone? Right. And not even expecting anything in return. I'm not expecting this to turn into anything per se, but just being valuable for someone, you know?
Right. Well, and obviously based upon our relationship, I'll say you keep drilling it into me. I'm not sure I listen all the time, but you keep drilling it into me. And so we did a interview this morning with the pricing lady, and I know Janine. And at the end of the conversation, after we stopped recording, that was the opportunity for us to then network and talk about. And first she invited me to her podcast, which was awesome. And so, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it that the philosophy and the structure and the mindset and all the things you bring to the table to business owners like me, it's absolutely valid, and it pays off. So, I had a question there, but you already answered it, which is all crazy, right? Because it just took me into how you made this transition. So let me ask you this. You talked about podcasts being around for a long time, and everybody talks about podcasts, and yet most people really struggle with them. And so, from your perspective, let's talk about how business owners who do podcasts, what do they get wrong?
Yeah. Well, I find a lot of business owners that are focused. And again, when I'm talking podcasts, I'm not an expert. I'm not talking about comedy podcasts or true crime podcasts or sports podcasts, but like
Right.
people have actual businesses, right? And they're doing it to support their business, to be the authority, to connect with more people in the industry, whether it's referral partner, client, past client, current client, potential client. So I find a lot of people are focused on the wrong things, meaning like they're so focused on maybe the tech. It could be different for different people, but like they're so focused on like the tech setup, and they spend like 6 months thinking, should I get this mic and this video camera or whatever? I'm like, listen, or what should I use to record? I'm like, listen, get a USB mic, go on Amazon, find the best review one that plugs in the back of your computer. Like both of us are using a Yeti. I have a like ATR 2100 over there. There are lots of good ones that plug in the computer. They're all going to sound pretty good. I mean, for $150. You could use anything that you normally do meetings for, right? And so I think people overcomplicate the process and they get hung up on those things. If you use Zoom for meetings, use Zoom. If you use Microsoft Teams for meetings, use Microsoft Teams, because all these have recording functions, right? And so people get hung up on the tech setup. You know, they also are focused, I think, on the wrong metrics, and they're like, well, how do I get downloads and subscribers? Like once they get past like the tech hurdle, or how do I name my show? For the first, I think over 6 months of my show, Pat, I didn't have a name of my show. I just got started with it, and you'd come on, I'd be like, welcome to the podcast, and blah, blah, blah. And I just bought my name as a
Right.
domain, and that's where I published it until I'm like, okay, I settled on a name. People aren't paying attention as much as we think. And so there was no name of the show either. But they're focused on, I think, the wrong metrics, which I think are vanity metrics, which are download subscribers, right? And so for me, I look at it as a way to give to my relationships. So I look at who are the most valuable people in my ecosystem that I want to give to, like who are the referral partnerships and strategic partnerships I want to give to, because people are like, well, how do I measure a success of a podcast, right? Because the only way people think about it is, well, how do I get lots of download subscribers? And I was talking to someone about this last week, and their lifetime value, they're a software company, the lifetime value of a client is $2 million. Okay. And
Wow.
they don't serve everyone.
Right.
So, and they were asking me, I go, listen, let me ask you, would you rather have 50 people in your industry who are engaged with your podcast, listening to your podcast that you've had on the podcast, or would you rather have 1 million downloads? Like, which one would you rather have? You get one client, it's worth $2 million to you, or you get one partner that can refer you clients over the
Right.
course of years. And obviously the answer is obvious. Like, I've had people come to me, Pat, and they go, I have 1 million downloads. I'm not monetizing it. What do I do? And basically, I shared them some strategies. They weren't focused on their business. They were just focused on
Downloads.
downloads, right?
Right.
Like anyone, so it wasn't supporting what they did as a business. So I think the right metrics
Mhm.
are relationships to me, right?
Right.
Best relationships. And that's when I look at the podcast as serving those.
Well, it's funny that you put it in that perspective, because it's no, I reflect as you're saying that it's no different for me. when I was a real estate agent, we did a very large percentage of our business through referrals. And that was based upon building relationships with either people that were in our network or people that we did business with. And, it wasn't like we were spending $10 million on running ads on billboards. And, some people do that. That's great. But I think it starts with, the mindset of what are you trying, if you're trying to achieve downloads, that's a strategy. It's a different strategy. Is it really a strategy that's going to make you money? Is it going to, so I love that.
And people don't realize, Pat, like people ask, even if you look at the top podcasts out there,
Right.
they gained viewership and it's a different business model. At that point, they're a media company. If you look at like Joe Rogan or some of these other people, but you have to think they didn't get their popularity through the podcast, right?
Oh.
He's a comedian. He announces on UFC. He was the host of a bunch of reality shows. Like he had following from all these other channels, right? It's not like he put up a podcast and they're like, oh, this Joe Rogan person's amazing, right? So people get caught up in that just because he has a podcast, but he gained, these viewership and people from all these other things in his life.
Right. Yeah. And
then it spirals from there, obviously, but
sure, absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about the Dream 200, and I really want to, go deep into that. So where did it come from first? Where did that concept come from?
yeah, I mean, really, I didn't come up with any of this stuff, but like, I remember studying Dan Kennedy. If they don't know, he's got a bunch of books out there. He's, just teaches about direct response marketing.
He hasn't stopped. He hasn't stopped.
Yeah, he's still around.
Like so I'm a part of their Diamond member group, and between him and Russell, it's like, oh my gosh. And what's interesting, and I sorry for interrupting you, but
yeah, go.
Nothing he said isn't still applicable today.
Yeah, I think Adam Whitty of Advantage, who I'm friends with, bought GKIC or Magnetic Marketing, and then I think Russell Brunson, who runs ClickFunnels now at the time, like he bought it from Adam.
Right.
And I think it was Dan Kennedy who mentioned the Chet Holmes, The Ultimate Sales Machine book. And I actually had Amanda Holmes and someone who was high up in that organization on the podcast a number of years ago. But he talks about that concept in his book. Great book. I remember I had it, and I just would go through it. It's the Ultimate Sales Machine book, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And he talks about that concept. And in the concept, really is like focusing in on your dream, clients. And like when I think of Dream 200, I think of not just clients, but strategic partners, referral partners. It could be clients, just relationships in that particular space, right? And so it's really focusing in on it's the first step. Like when I talk to people, Pat, about a podcast and how do you profit with a podcast, the first step is create your Dream 200. And that makes people zero in on one, who's an ideal partner or client, what niche are they going to go in? Obviously they probably have their service line, but who are the people in that industry? When someone has a specific niche to go in, they tend to dominate more because they're super focused as opposed to across multiple. And so that's just learning from some of the people who are top marketers in direct response.
So when you look at, let's go back to the relationships, and I'm going to come back to the building of that 200, if you may. But when you talk about relationships from your perspective, because on our show, we talk about what you don't know is costing you commas and zeros, and we reference that to profit leaks. What's the biggest profit leak from your perspective when it comes to relationships for business owners?
No follow-up.
Okay.
I think it has to do with sales. Like if you think of sales, and again, we've all heard this, like, oh, you gotta 8 to 12 times or whatever before someone decides to work with you or whatever it is, right? And I'm sure for lower price products or services, it's different, but I'm talking about like kind of higher level B2B, follow up,
right?
Staying top of mind, right? Because it's shocking. There is people who that over time they're busy with their lives, right? And so staying top of mind and follow up, I would say, is the number one thing, and because it takes time and energy, and there's systems that could be put in place for it, right? Like there's a lot of systems we have, like for people, there's email systems, there's text systems, and but I don't know, nothing replaces like just calling someone,
Right.
and so people think I have these sophisticated ways of like following up or whatever. I really don't. I mean, our team, we use we've used over the years Pipedrive and Trello. And right now we use Active Campaign because it sends a lot of emails, but there's a deals function. And so every person, we have a referral strategic partner board, and we have a potential client board. And so, there's columns of pipeline, but our columns, we call it, Pat, the columns of giving. So it's not like moving someone one place to the other. It's actually columns of giving. And so when let's say I put Pat in and go, hey, what are ways I can give to Pat? Okay. Have I had him on the podcast yet? Have I sent him sent him a free physical newsletter? Have I introduced him to anyone? Have I posted about him on social media? So all these are kind of columns of giving. It's not, hey, we need to move Pat to stage 3 or 4. It's all, how do we give to this person? And then the way we handle it is we have a meeting 3 days a week. And so if I'm like, oh, I want to make sure to remember to connect with Pat in like 3 months, I don't want to leave it to chance. So we set a schedule in Active Campaign of like 3 months. And so on the meeting, we go up who's for this week that we need to follow up with. And I may just text them. I mean, it's not like an automation. I may give them
hey Pat text. That's one of those, hey Pat.
What's that?
Listen, I think I need to call Jeremy.
Right. Well, I mean, typically if I do that, I'm following up immediately with a phone call.
I know.
As you're like, wait, I'm like, hey, and then I'm like, I'm calling him right now. But there has to be some type of system, or it's left to chance. And like if I'm on with, let's say, I'm on with Dan Cashel, let's say, and talking to Dan reminds me of Mike Aguilera. I'm like, oh, okay. Like just thinking of someone else while I'm doing that process. But we do want to make sure there's a future task set in place so that it's not left to chance from a follow-up perspective.
Makes sense. It's one thing, and I will certainly acknowledge that the mindset that you're talking about just doesn't flow through in that system you're talking about, but it also flows through in just even like on a podcast, you've shared ideas to contribute to other people. So, you've mentioned in the show, and I've mentioned in the show some names of folks. And now that gives us an opportunity to give back to them, acknowledge them, but also gives us an opportunity to make those connections. So there's a lot of those things that there seem so subtle, but they're so important.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned like Brian Kurtz. He's one of the best people I know. Okay. He's been a mentor, a friend, a colleague, and every chance I get, I talk about his book Over Deliver, and the more people that get it, and he's not, and people don't get sick of it, but probably the 11th time I've texted him in the past 30 days saying I mentioned his book to someone or somewhere, right? And it won't get old because great, he wants more people, hearing his message.
Right. Well, absolutely. So let me ask you this question. And we might define traditional outreach in a number of different ways, but why do you feel traditional outreach right now is broken?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you define traditional outreach. So I'll define what I think it is. Because it's leading with an ask, right? Most traditional outreach, I find, leads with, here's my stuff, get it.
Right.
It's not leading with a give, and when I'm sending a message to someone, I'm thinking, it goes back in direct response, right? Relationships, direct response, which is like, what will elicit a response? Okay. And typically, if you were giving to someone, if I'm saying, hey, Pat, like, we've all gotten those cold LinkedIn messages or emails or whatever, and it's just pitching their stuff, right? But what if it was a give, right? It's like, if I reach out to you and say, hey, Pat, and I regurgitate all my services onto you, or I say, Pat, I have an introduction of someone. I think one, would be good for your podcast, and two, I think it'd be a good partnership for you potentially. You could refer people to each other. Which are you going to respond to, right? One that helps you and ones that gives to you, and both you're top of mind. One of them, those messages are going in the trash. The other one's going to get responded to. So that's the way I differentiate. Is it an ask or is it a give?
Right. Yeah. And there's so many books. I mean, Bob Burger wrote a great book on this topic of, giving, and ultimately when you give, not that you expect receiving, but you will receive. So instead of chasing leads, we know the real move is engineering conversations with the right people done consistently, right? So break down, if you may, how owners should shift their thinking around this, whether it's a podcast or anything else. Like, how should they shift their thinking?
Well, I mean, the way I think of it is like, okay, from a messaging perspective or relationship perspective, how do I give? Right. And that's it. And so there's different ways of giving. Like I've chosen, a podcast, right? Inviting people on the podcast, mention people on my podcast, everything around the podcast. I find that's like, Pat, my background's in biochemistry. If you ask me to write a blog post, I will get one done every 10 years. But like, it's also something I could put into a system. I could have the conversation in its content. It's something that they can share.
Right.
So a podcast, but for me, it's also then a way to give to them. Two, then it goes live. It's a way to give them. Three, then I'll post on social a snippet of that episode as a way to give to them. So whatever way someone's thinking of how to give to someone else, it could be an introduction, it could be a piece of content. I choose, a post, a podcast, a video, and snippets, and putting on. It could be a social post. It could, all those ways. I'm trying to think of other ways. Like typically, it could be an idea. Like I was on with I had a podcast interview last week. And I'll pull up the name, but it's the guy Thomas Millar started Equivista, and it's like basically a equity management and valuation platform that helps private equity companies. And so I knew someone who runs Lou Sokolowski runs a great PE group, private equity group, Opus. And so I texted Lou and I'm like, I have an idea for you of maybe how you can partner with Equivista, right? And so part of it was like a potential introduction. The other part was I just thought of this idea for him that he could help his current members with. And so it could just be an idea. So again, it's just a give. I don't need I'm not asking anything of Lou or Tom here, but that's it could be whatever way someone thinks of giving, right?
So let me ask you this. So I'm going to come back in a second to podcasts going on them, but let's talk about our own podcasts, right? First. So a lot of times people struggle with, well, who do I get on the show? And you talked about the Dream 100 or the Dream 200, right?
Yeah.
And so like, if I'm hearing this episode and I go, Jeremy, this all sounds wonderful. Okay. And who do I have on my show? Like where, right? Like talk to us about that.
Well, I mean, so it depends what industry. So like, we'll give an example. I remember I was talking to one of the clients is a financial advisor. Okay. And I'm like, who are your ideal clients? He's like, well, anyone with money. I'm like, well, that's not really a niche. Okay. And so I go, well, who are your best clients? And we looked at some of their best clients who also were good referring people.
Right.
And we saw that like 30 to 40% were dentists. Okay. So I'm like, okay. So I look at who they love working with, who they get the best results for, right? And is profitable, obviously, because if you like working with them and, and they're not profitable, then that's a waste of time. But, who do you like working and get the best results for? And so we looked at, okay, let's look at who are first of all, people in your network that are in the dental industry.
Right.
One. Two, let's look at when we look at the Dream 200, we think of who are kind of the strategic partners, referral partners, and some of those categories. And you and I have brainstormed about this. And so one of the categories is, a consultant in that industry that doesn't do what you do, or someone who runs a conference. So it turned out that he invited, through one of his connections who was in the dental industry, referred to him, because it's easy to refer when you have a podcast, referred this person who was a top consultant, and he ran a conference. Okay. So he had him on the podcast, just formed a relationship. Oh, this is great, and said, hey, why don't you come be my guest at my conference, my next conference? And this wasn't an inexpensive ticket. I think it was like $2,000 or $3,000 for a ticket. He's like, hey, come be my guest. I'll introduce you around. So he went to the conference. He didn't know, again, at that point, it was very new. He didn't network in the dental industry, and he just had some clients. This guy, he said, went around. This consultant obviously ran the conference, went around and just introduced him to the top players who were at that conference. And this person, in a very short period of time, went from not being connected in the industry, knowing some, dentists here and there, to basically meeting some of the top people, right? Yeah. And so that's an example, right? I mean, some people know, it's very clear, here's the people I'm serving, right? And some people just need, we kind of think of, well, who are your best clients that you love working with, and kind of go from there.
Right. It's the E to P, right? It's from entrepreneurial to purposeful. And we all have those visions of who we should be talking to or talking with, or how we should be doing it. And yet it's really the purposeful process. So let me ask you this. I think you talked about some of these things earlier. What's the biggest mistake people make when starting a podcast that you haven't mentioned yet?
Let's see. I mean, the biggest mistake, it tends to be focusing on the wrong things, like the tech and downloads piece. The second thing is more like what I call, or the third thing is kind of more the perfectionist dilemma, because a lot of people, they're successful for a certain reason. And it's some of the reason is, we know high performers, they pay attention to every last detail. And so what I find holds people back is that perfectionist dilemma. Everything's got to be perfect,
right,
before I do anything. Everything's got to be in a row. And the reality is, people like flaws, right? And so is the video perfect and what I say perfect? And they may try and script certain things, but in the end, people want authenticity and just, real conversations. And so I find that perfectionist dilemma could get in the way. It could even be actually publishing it. It's okay, we gotta cut every mistake out of the interview, or we gotta have the content a certain way. I hate to admit this, but our team obviously writes my post. I don't go and reread it and try and correct it.
Yeah.
Okay. John, my business partner, was a speechwriter at the White House. Okay. And we actually did an episode on the perfectionist dilemma. And he, again, we don't let him write his own posts. Okay. And I'm don't even read it, because it will probably it may drive you crazy, certain things, but it doesn't matter. The matter is, it's going to be high quality regardless. So, no one is going to be oh, you know what? This sentence structure is off a little bit. It's cool. Thanks for featuring me, Pat. Let me share it.
Sure. What's funny about that is we did have John on a prior episode. It's not been published yet. It's coming up. But after the episode, we had this great conversation about things that I needed to not make perfect, but the feedback was really, it was awesome. So when you said that, I'm just oh, now I know where that came from. That's so funny. I loved it. It was a great episode. And I just do, both of you guys are just so amazing to helping us Moment Grow.
Thanks.
So I was thinking you were going to say the biggest mistake that people make when starting a podcast is they stop.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're not focused on the Dream 200, then they do stop.
Right.
And it goes back to not having the right people on your show, or not making time for it, but really not making time for it, bleeds into not being focused on the right thing. Because if it's driving goals for the business, which is like referral partners, clients, partnerships, then should be doing those things anyways, right?
Yeah.
And so, and people don't focus on those right type of guests and relationships, they do stop, no doubt.
And this last piece, I think you'll agree, but I'm going to also share it from a kudos perspective, is that it's also about a process. You have to have a process because you're trying to run a business. And, you guys, Rise25 has helped me with a process to bring some great guests on the show where I'm not having to do that. And you're filling the calendar, and we love that part of it. And so a process is super important. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate about what you all do in everything that you do, by the way. It's not just process for podcasts, but it's process for everything. So, okay, Mr. Jeremy, we're heading into the fourth quarter.
Well, really quickly, this bleeds into kind of what you do too, which is in my life, I try and hire mentors and experts in every aspect, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you do. Like if someone needs help with, it could be from savings on taxes, it could be from, business advice, whatever it is, because you have a lot of different things that you offer. I always look at people who have been there, done that. And so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I'm always looking at bringing on people who know what they're doing in that realm. Like, could I, even from a health perspective, like, do I know how to work out? I mean, I've studied the human body for thousands and thousands of hours, but I have a personal trainer because they hold me accountable and they're going to basically make sure I go harder and faster, and they'll teach me things based around what they know. So I'm always a big proponent of hiring someone who's an expert in their specific field.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you saying that. And what's shocking to me, and this is not intended to be disrespectful to anybody listening, but right now we're talking to 4 to 6 business owners a day about the research and development tax credit. We're talking to them about 30 to 40% savings on their healthcare benefits, a strategy that we have. We're talking about tax mitigation because it's tax time. But here's where I'm going. It blows my mind how many business owners do not have that awareness about those things, and yet they all have, accountants around them, CPAs around them, advisors around them, even things like how they're buying insurance, how they're running their retirement. And the point is this: it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, is that a lot of entrepreneurs have not prepared for exit. And they're preparing for exit every day. And it's these things like podcasts, the strategies that you're talking about that help them put more money in their top line or bottom line. And so that's what drives us every day. And I know it drives you guys as well, because ultimately what you all do helps us put more people in our pipeline and have more opportunity. Okay, so here we go. These are quick hits. I'm going to share something with you, and I'm looking for your it's like the 2-minute drill, we call it. So, one relationship that's changed your business and life, or both.
Yeah, I won't mention family like my wife because that's too easy of an answer. But Brian Kurtz is one that sticks out. Just has been super valuable and super taught me a lot.
Biggest networking mistake you've ever made?
Well, I'll give 2. One is just not following up, not making the time to follow up. So then that just relationship dies on the vine. And then, early on, I would send, like for super busy people, I think I was jamming too much into my messaging, and it just had to be short and sweet, right? Because people are busy.
Best follow-up strategy?
I think text. I mean, especially if you know them, but like a text message.
Yeah. I love you guys. One of your follow-up strategies, though, is the gifts.
Yeah.
Touches. Yeah. I mean,
we'll do that for company. That started as a separate business. I mean, that created a separate business because we were doing that for our partners and clients, sending them stuff, and then they asked us to do it for them. So everyone likes getting like food in the mail,
If someone only did one thing from this podcast, what should it be?
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one. Just text someone who's important to you and just appreciate them. you know,
Yeah.
not ask for anything, just say like, I appreciate you and why, and the specific reason why.
Yeah. I go back to, again, my experiences, and it's funny that you said that because something just clicked. So, I'm part of a group with Roland Frazier, and we were in an event in his mastermind group, and they said, take out your phones. I'm like, okay. And we did that. We took out our phones, and there was a very simple message. I'm in an event, and I started thinking about you. We haven't talked in a while. And it was amazing how many people responded to that text in just wanting to know what the event was. That was it. Just what was the event? And so It's just so simple. Sometimes we forget that, right? Okay, last one. Actually, not last one. I think I have a couple more. Podcasts or ads?
Podcast or ads?
Yeah, podcast or ads.
Like, which one would I choose?
Which one would you choose?
Oh, I mean, obviously podcast. I mean, if you took away my podcast, I wouldn't know what to do.
Dream 200 or 10,000 leads?
Dream 200.
Okay, so Jeremy,
unless the 10,000 leads were part of my Dream 200, then I'll take the 10,000.
I love it. Well, can I have both? No. So first of all, thank you so much. First, for being on the show today, and then secondly, just for all the contributions, you and the team and John and just everybody. It's just amazing experience. And so if there was one thought you'd leave with our listeners today, and then if somebody wants to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Inspired Insider is my podcast. Everything's free. So like you could search anything you want, like any topic about podcasting or just about other entrepreneurs is on there. I've been doing for over 15 years now. So just go to inspiredinsider.com. You could also, there is a, contact form there. Also, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there at Jeremy, Weisz, there. So
awesome. And what's one last thought you have for listeners today?
I mean, my last is always like just approaching any relationship and look through from like a, business standpoint. Like just scroll through, usually once a day, I'll scroll through my phone and I'll scroll to someone who I haven't talked to in 4, 5, 6 months. And then I'll choose someone just to say hello to and see how they're doing. And so just, it's so easy to send a text message,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, Jeremy, first, again, thank you so much for being on today and all your contributions. So I'll leave you with this final thought, listeners. If you don't have a system for relationships, you don't have a pipeline. And what you don't know about your network is costing you commas and zeros. We are very grateful that you listened to our show, and we would love you to share it, subscribe to it, and tune in the next time. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Pat.
If you're serious about building a more profitable business, make sure you subscribe to the Owner's Profit Playbook so you never miss an episode. And if you know another business owner who could benefit from this conversation, share it with them. To learn more about how we help business owners uncover hidden opportunities and strengthen their financial strategy, visit mancusocg.com. And remember, what you don't know is costing you commas and zeros.